Okay, let's unpack this popular image of Vikings. We see them everywhere, right? Movies, video games, even cartoons. Often they're these, incredibly tough, almost superhuman warriors.
Invincible.
Exactly. Larger than life, ready to conquer anything. But what if I told you that for most of us, myself included, I think a single day in a real Viking settlement would be, well, an insurmountable challenge. It might actually break us.
I think that's probably accurate, sadly.
Today, we're diving deep into some really fascinating source material. It promises to be a stark reality check, I think. Our mission to explore the unvarnished, harsh realities of daily Viking existence.
Yeah.
We're going to try and strip away those romanticized myths and reveal why contemporary comforts and our modern expectations would make survival in that world nearly impossible. You said it's a stack of truly eye-opening sources on this, and we're going to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge to illustrate the unforgiving living conditions, the relentless pursuit of sustenance, the constant threat of disease without modern medicine, and the rigid social order punctuated by ever-present dangers.
That's a critical mission, yeah. And what's particularly insightful here, I think, is how our modern sensibilities, our ingrained expectations of comfort, convenience, safety, would just fundamentally clash with the brutal practicality of Viking life.
Right.
We'll be connecting the dots between their environment, their daily grind, their health, to show just how different survival was back then. And frankly, why our current human operating system is simply not built for it anymore. We're going to explore how every aspect of their world demanded a level of resilience and physical endurance that we rarely encounter today. It forces us to consider what we've gained and maybe what we've lost in the march toward modernity.
Okay, let's start there then. Let's begin with the very heart of Viking domestic life, the Longhouse. If you're imagining like a cozy, insulated home with central heating and multiple rooms, well, prepare for a stark awakening.
Definitely.
Our sources highlight that the Longhouse wasn't just a dwelling, it was the absolute epicenter of Viking existence. At its core, quite literally, was the central hearth.
The fire.
Yeah, the fire. This wasn't merely a fireplace, it was the indisputable focal point, indispensable for everything. Heat during those long, frigid Scandinavian winters, light after dusk, and all the food preparation. It was where life happened. Families gathered, cooked, found whatever precious warmth was available, often with a large communal family sharing the space.
You've hit on a critical point there. That central hearth, while absolutely vital, came with a massive, unavoidable drawback. These longhouses typically lacked any kind of chimney as we know it.
Right, no chimney.
Instead, smoke was meant to escape through small openings at the gables of the roof, what they called vindu, or windeye.
Windeye.
Yeah, surprisingly, that's the origin of our modern English word window. Now, imagine living with that rudimentary ventilation system. It meant the inhabitants were constantly contending with thick, pervasive smoke. On damp, windless days, when the air hung heavy and still, the situation would have been particularly dreadful, just filling the entire space with a choking haze.
I can almost smell it.
For a modern person, this isn't just an annoyance. This constant exposure to acrid wood smoke would rapidly lead to chronic respiratory issues, persistent eye irritation, long-term lung damage. Think of constantly watering, stinging eyes and a cough that never goes away.
Oh, definitely.
It would actively compound other prevalent health challenges like pneumonia, making daily existence a continuous, painful struggle for breath and vision. You simply wouldn't be able to escape that environment.
And it wasn't just the smoke, right? Even with that roaring fire at the center, the interiors remained surprisingly cold by our standards.
Oh, yeah. Very cold.
Our sources indicate winter temperatures inside a longhouse could hover around a chilly 12-14 degrees Celsius, which is about 53-57 Fahrenheit.
Right. And remember, that's even with animals often housed indoors with the family for their body warmth.
Wait, animals inside?
Often, yes, especially during the coldest parts of winter. Adds a whole other layer of sensory experience and, let's be honest, odors to the mix.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Smoke, cold, and animal smells.
Lovely.
And the light. The hearth provided some flickering light, but it was often woefully insufficient for any kind of detailed handiwork at night.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Imagine trying to mend clothing, carve tools, or engage in any intricate craft in that perpetual dimness, day after day, week after week. It's a profound contrast to our climate-controlled environments and abundant, instantaneous artificial lighting.
Absolutely.
The profound psychological stress this would impose on a contemporary individual is immense. We're accustomed to personal space, to privacy, and to abundant, consistent light.
The perpetual lack of these, combined with living in such close communal quarters with multiple family members and livestock, would lead to sensory overload, sleep disruption, and a general sense of pervasive unease and claustrophobia.
It sounds maddening.
This isn't just about physical discomfort, it's a deep mental toll. You would find yourself constantly on edge, unable to find respite from the environment or from the constant presence of others. The simple act of finding a quiet, well-lit corner to simply think would be an impossible luxury.
And let's not forget the sheer labor involved just to achieve those chilly temperatures.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources emphasize that maintaining even 12-14 degrees Celsius required immense, daily, physically demanding labor. We're talking felling trees with basic axes, splitting logs by hand, chopping firewood into manageable pieces, and then hauling and storing it for months.
Non-stop work.
This wasn't just a chore you might do on a Saturday afternoon. It was a critical, back-breaking survival task that consumed a huge portion of their energy and time every single day, just to avoid freezing to death.
Okay.
For us, it's literally turning a dial on a thermostat.
Right.
For them, it was hours of relentless muscle-straining work.
That's precisely it. This connects directly to the fundamental difference in energy expenditure required for basic survival then versus now. Our daily lives are so optimized for efficiency and comfort that we've largely forgotten what it means to exert constant, heavy physical effort just to meet our most basic needs.
So true.
In the Viking Age, your caloric intake and physical output were directly, immediately, and brutally linked to whether you lived or died. The key insight isn't just that they worked hard. It's that their very identity and survival were so intrinsically tied to physical exertion that the modern concept of leisure or self-expression outside of labor was likely completely alien to them. What does that say about how we define ourselves today? We might complain about our daily commute, but imagine your daily commute being the effort to simply stay alive.
That puts things in perspective.
Okay, moving beyond the relative shelter of the Longhouse, let's consider the broader environment. The Scandinavian homelands of the Vikings were characterized by notoriously harsh and changeable climatic conditions.
Absolutely. Unforgiving.
We're talking long, brutally cold winters and short, intense summers. This wasn't just a mild inconvenience to their lifestyle. It was a constant, powerful force dictating everything. Everything from what they eat to how they structured their entire year, right down to their very survival. It necessitated remarkable adaptability in agricultural methods, forcing them to cultivate hardy crops like barley, oats, and rye, which had shorter growing seasons and were less susceptible to the devastating effects of frost.
Climate was truly the ultimate arbiter of Viking survival. Our sources highlight significant shifts, like the onset of the Little Ice Age, around 1250 CE.
Oh, right, the Little Ice Age, which dramatically impacted Viking settlements, particularly in regions like Greenland. Colder temperatures led to increased sea ice and exacerbated storms, making vital imports, things like essential iron tools for farming and crafting, weapons for defense, even supplementary food supplies, extremely difficult, if not impossible, to ship.
Wow, cut off.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows how directly and immediately environmental changes impacted every single aspect of their lives without the buffering effects of global trade or advanced technology we have now.
Right.
For instance, persistent droughts decimated hay production, which was absolutely crucial for overwintering their livestock, essentially their stored wealth and food.
Can't feed the animals, you're in trouble.
Big trouble. Simultaneously, rising sea levels began to inundate productive farmland near fords. These environmental challenges directly threaten their food security, their economic viability, and the very existence of their settlements. A single severe winter could mean famine, disease, and the collapse of an entire community.
It's so precarious. And the impact of climate extended far beyond just farming, didn't it? It profoundly affected trade, which was vital for their prosperity and access to resources.
Absolutely. Trade was key.
Or talk about the export of highly valuable goods like walrus ivory, which was a significant source of income, and the import of essential iron tools. The disruption of these trade routes due to unpredictable weather patterns and sea ice could lead to economic collapse that profoundly impacted daily life. For a modern person, accustomed to global supply chains and climate-controlled environments where we can order anything online and have it delivered tomorrow, this immediate and severe environmental vulnerability would be utterly overwhelming.
Completely overwhelming.
No Amazon Prime in the Viking Age. Your entire existence, your ability to get the most basic necessities, was dictated by unpredictable natural forces. without any of the safety nets or diversification that we rely on today.
This raises an important question for us, doesn't it? How would our reliance on diversified economies and robust infrastructure fare when our entire existence is dictated by unpredictable natural forces without any of the sophisticated safety nets or global resilience we take for granted?
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the fjord is frozen solid, cutting off all trade for the foreseeable future. What do you do that day? We would be completely at the mercy of the elements in a way that modern society has largely engineered itself out of, and the psychological burden of that constant precarity would be immense.
Definitely.
The deeper insight here is that resilience for the Vikings wasn't about bouncing back, it was about perpetually enduring a knife-edge existence.
Okay, let's talk about food then. Or rather, the relentless, all-consuming pursuit of it. In a Viking settlement, acquiring, preserving, preparing food was a constant, physically demanding endeavor, light years away from our modern grocery stores and ready-to-eat meals.
Oh, absolutely. A different universe.
Our sources tell us the Viking diet was primarily high in protein, around 30-35%, and fat, about 35-40%, with roughly 30% carbohydrates. This nutritional breakdown, which varied seasonally, was absolutely essential, especially in winter, to fuel their incredibly demanding physical lives.
They needed that energy.
Yeah. They ate meat from their domesticated animals like cattle, sheep, pigs, a variety of fish caught from their abundant waters, salmon, halibut, cod, herring, and what vegetables they could cultivate or forage, including cabbage, beans, peas, carrots, turnips.
A decent variety, seasonally at least.
Right. Cereals like barley, rye, oats, and some wheat were staples, forming the basis of their bread and porridges. Milk products were consumed, and for something sweet they had foraged berries, fruits like plums, apples, cherries, and the precious honey.
But what's particularly eye-opening here and quite disturbing from a modern health perspective is the reality of their basic staples, especially grains. Bread and porridge were fundamental components of their diet, providing much-needed carbs. But unlike our refined flours, these were often made from tougher grains like barley, rye, or oats, described in our sources as heavy and brown and stuffed with husks.
Stuffed with husks. Sounds rough.
Extremely rough. Now, archaeological analysis of skeletal remains paints a vivid picture. Even relatively young Vikings suffered from severely worn teeth due to chewing these incredibly coarse grains and the grit that inevitably made its way into their food from millstones.
Grit from the stones. Ugh.
Yeah. This isn't just about tough food, it's a direct causal link between their diet and chronic pain, infection, and eventually disability. For a modern person, accustomed to soft, refined foods and regular dental care, constant discomfort from toothaches, infections spreading into the jaw, eventual inability to eat properly due to missing or damaged teeth, it would quickly lead to malnutrition and further health decline.
Oh, definitely. Dental pain is debilitating.
Imagine the agony of a constant toothache with no painkillers, no dentist, and knowing that your ability to chew the very food you need to survive is rapidly diminishing. It makes daily functioning unbearable.
Beyond the coarseness of the food, there's the critical issue of availability and variety, right?
Huge issue.
Food preservation methods were rudimentary, but essential for survival through lean periods. Smoking, drying, or heavily salting meat and fish. Cooked meat could also be preserved in vats of whey, apparently.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Housekeeping and food planning were meticulously adapted to the seasons, with self-sufficiency being typical for farmers. This meant food availability was entirely seasonal and localized. Forget food choice or variety beyond what could be grown, hunted, or preserved nearby.
Nipping out for takeout.
Not a chance. You ate what was available when it was available, and you were grateful for it because the alternative was starvation. No out-of-season strawberries for these folks.
Precisely. This lack of dietary freedom and the constant physical demands of acquiring and preparing food would create a profound sense of monotony and deprivation for a modern individual accustomed to global food markets and diverse culinary experiences.
Yeah, the boredom alone.
This isn't just about missing your favorite snack. It would deeply impact morale and mental well-being beyond mere physical sustenance. The psychological toll of knowing your next meal is entirely dependent on your strenuous daily efforts, and that will likely be the same rough, coarse food as yesterday. That would be immense.
Definitely.
It forces us to confront how much of our daily comfort is tied to the effortless diversity of our food supply.
To really drive home this contrast, our sources provided a fantastic comparative table. Let's walk through some of those staples and think about the difference in labor and convenience and what that truly meant for a person's daily experience.
Good idea.
First, that coarse barley bread we just talked about versus our soft wheat bread. For the Vikings, it was hand-grinding grain, often using a cornstone, incredibly arduous work, than mixing the dough and baking it from scratch over an open fire.
Hours of work.
For us, it's factory-produced, pre-sliced bread wrapped in plastic, available at any supermarket. The grim implication for them: severe tooth wear, chronic dental issues, the constant discomfort we just described.
The modern convenience is truly astonishing when you lay it out like that. And it's not just the bread. Think about smoked or salted fish versus fresh salmon.
Right.
For the Vikings, it meant catching the fish from often turbulent waters, then spending hours or even days smoking or salting it to preserve it for months. They needed to know the precise methods to avoid spoilage and illness.
A real skill.
A vital skill. For us, it's a perfectly pristine, pre-packaged fillet from the refrigerated section of the supermarket, available year-round. While their methods provided crucial fat for energy through winter, it highlights their complete reliance on seasonal catches and intensely demanding preservation techniques.
Then there are forage berries versus supermarket berries. They were entirely dependent on seasonal foraging, traversing forests and fields, hoping to find enough before the wildlife or the winter consumed them.
And knowing which ones wouldn't kill you.
Exactly. They had to know which berries were safe to eat and where to find them. We have year-round availability of fresh produce flown in from across the globe, perfectly ripe and clean. For them, this often meant seasonal deficiencies in their diet. For us, it's just another colorful item on the shopping list.
Yeah.
A minor decision in a world of abundance. And finally, the home-reared livestock versus industrially farmed meat.
Big difference there.
For the Vikings, this meant daily animal care feeding, cleaning stalls, milking, protecting them from predators, and eventually the full hands-on, often brutal process of slaughter and butchering, utilizing every part of the animal.
Nothing wasted.
Right. For us, it's mass-produced, pre-cut meat, hygienically packaged and ready to cook, with no direct interaction with the animal's life or death.
Yeah. This comparison immediately highlights the immense, physically demanding labor and meticulous planning required for basic sustenance in the Viking era versus the effortless access in modern society. It truly underscores how much time and energy you would suddenly have to dedicate just to food. It makes the "wouldn't last a day" premise tangibly, even viscerally clear.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's food. Now, here's where it gets particularly interesting and perhaps quite sobering for our modern 9-to-5, weekend-loving listener.
Uh-oh.
A Viking's day began at sunrise, or often before, and was filled with unrelenting hard work, family responsibilities, community involvement. The modern concept of distinct work versus leisure simply did not exist for the vast majority.
No clocking on.
No. For them, our sources clearly state everything was life. Every action was intrinsically linked to survival. Think about your last vacation, that moment of blissful relaxation. Now take that image and utterly erase it from your mind.
That's a fundamental cultural and practical difference that would utterly disorient a modern person. The sheer volume and physical intensity of daily tasks for everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest adult, from dawn to dusk, demonstrates that spare time, as we know it, was virtually non-existent.
Right.
This isn't just a difference in work ethic, it's a fundamental difference in how life itself was structured, with survival as the constant overarching goal. A modern person, accustomed to weekends, paid time off, specialized labor where others handle the unpleasant tasks, distinct periods of relaxation. They would quickly succumb to physical exhaustion and mental burnout.
Just couldn't keep up.
They would simply lack the stamina or the ingrained mindset for that kind of relentless, lifelong grind.
Let's break down those relentless daily routines by gender and age, as our sources provide a detailed picture. Men, or Carls as they were known, the free folk.
Right, the curls.
They were deeply involved in farming, tending crops like wheat, oats, barley, through long growing seasons, from sowing to harvest. They were also fishing the unpredictable waters, building and repairing longhouses and ships, crafting tools and weapons, and tending to livestock, sheep, cattle, pigs, which involved daily feeding, cleaning, protection from predators.
Constant vigilance.
Their routine included checking their land for vandalism or theft, delegating tasks to farmhands if they had them, preparing goods for market. And while cinematic, raids were actually infrequent, maybe once or twice a year. But most fit men participated for the financial rewards and honor they offered, which could be critical for their family standing.
Right, risk versus reward.
Yeah.
And women, also Carls, had equally indispensable and arduous roles, often rising even earlier than the men to prepare the first meal and begin managing the household.
Earlier, wow.
Their tasks encompassed constant childcare, Hand washing clothes and fabrics, a physically demanding chore in cold water, often using lye.
Lye. Harsh stuff.
Very. And endlessly sewing, both making and repairing family clothes. Some even spun and wove, selling their creations to supplement family income, which could be a vital contribution. Cooking was a particularly time-consuming task, with a single meal often taking hours to prepare over an open hearth. They also played a crucial role in feeding and cleaning livestock and tended crops, especially if no thralls or slaves were available.
We'll get to thralls in a moment.
Right. Housework, like sweeping and scrubbing floors by hand, often using sand as an abrasive, was not just a chore but a source of personal pride, reflecting a well-managed household.
Even children were integrated into the labor force from a very early age.
Yeah.
Often from the moment they could walk, assisting with chores.
No real childhood then.
Not as we know it. Around age 12, boys would begin accompanying their fathers on business, taking on more physical farm tasks or learning crafts like smithing or carpentry. Girls, similarly, learned sewing, cooking, household chores from a young age, preparing them for their future roles. Boys were also expected to learn to fight, essential for honor and protection in a volatile society. Girls could be married as young as 13 to 15, with fathers typically arranging suitable matches to secure alliances or improve family standing.
So young.
Yeah. There was no childhood as we understand it today, disconnected from the harsh realities of adult labor and responsibility.
This extreme self-sufficiency is a critical point that cannot be overstated. Vikings were largely self-sufficient farmers, which meant that every single aspect of their existence, from growing their food to making their clothing to building their shelter, required direct, hands-on labor from the household.
Everything.
Contrast this sharply with our modern reliance on complex supply chains and specialized services where we simply outsource almost everything. Imagine having to make your own clothes from scratch, build your own house from raw materials, grow all your own food without pesticides or machinery.
It's impossible to imagine.
Every single thing you needed, every single comfort you had to produce or acquire through immense, unceasing personal effort. For a modern individual, the sudden and complete responsibility for all aspects of their survival, without the infrastructure, tools, or even the mental framework they rely on, would be an immediate and overwhelming failure point.
Yeah.
You'd likely be physically incapacitated within days from exhaustion, simply unable to meet the relentless demands.
And then there's the brutal reality of thralls, the slaves, which casts a dark shadow over Viking society.
And very dark shadow.
Our sources describe their existence as incredibly harsh and utterly devoid of rights. They work ceaselessly long hours, from early morning until late into the night, for minimal pay, often receiving only meager food and shelter.
Basically treated as tools.
Thralls perform the most physically demanding or undesirable tasks, frequently without breaks or proper meals. Female thralls faced additional horrific risks of violence, sexual harassment, and were often forced into multiple pregnancies, with their children also automatically forced into labor from birth, continuing the cycle. There was no escape.
This aspect of Viking society, where a significant portion of the population had no rights and existed purely as labor, subject to violence and sexual abuse, fundamentally challenges modern concepts of individual liberty and human dignity.
Absolutely repugnant.
A modern person, steeped in our understanding of human rights and personal autonomy, would find this morally repugnant and personally terrifying to witness, let alone experience. The sheer powerlessness and exploitation inherent in being a thrall would make adaptation impossible.
No way.
You simply wouldn't recognize it as a survivable existence, and your moral compass would be in utter disarray, making it impossible to function in such a world. The deepest insight here is perhaps the true cost of their society's relentless drive for expansion and resource acquisition, built on the backs of those utterly without freedom.
Chilling. Okay, let's shift gears to health and hygiene. Now, this might surprise some people, given the common perception of medieval grime.
Yeah, the dirty Viking myth.
Right. But evidence suggests that Vikings actually valued cleanliness and grooming, often quite meticulously. They regularly bathed and combed their hair. The very word Saturday derives from the Old Norse lagardag, meaning washing day or bathing day.
That's fascinating.
Archaeological finds support this emphasis, including a surprising abundance of combs, often made from bone or wood, some intricately carved as status symbols, as well as ear scoops and tweezers used for personal care.
So they cared about appearance.
They did. Our sources even note that their hygiene practices were considered appealing to English women, leading some to forsake their good manners for them. It's a surprising fact for many, shattering that image of perpetually dirty barbarians.
That's a great point, because what's truly fascinating here is the contradiction. While Vikings had a cultural emphasis on cleanliness and personal grooming, their methods from a modern public health perspective, well, they'd actively contribute to the spread of infections.
Oh, how so?
The famous Arab traveler Ibn Fadlan described a Norse washing ritual he observed, where a single large bowl of water was used sequentially by multiple men.
One bowl for everyone.
Yes. Each man would wash his face, hair, and hands in it, then blow his nose and spit into the very same bowl before passing it to the next person.
Oh no, that's horrifying.
Ibn Fadlan, whose own culture practiced ritual washing 5 times a day, was utterly appalled, considering the Norse to be the dirtiest creatures under Allah's sky due to this very practice.
I can see why.
For a modern person, acutely aware of pathogens, bacteria, the importance of sanitation, these practices would be not only repulsive, but terrifyingly dangerous. You'd be living in a constant state of germophobia, surrounded by practices that you know are actively spreading disease.
Yeah, constant anxiety.
Exactly. Leading to immediate health anxiety and, very likely, illness. It's a stark reminder that what feels clean isn't always actually clean by our understanding.
Wow. Okay, so that image of the robust Viking, the epitome of health and strength.
Mostly a myth, based on the evidence.
The archaeological evidence tells a very different story of widespread chronic pain and illness.
Yeah.
Studies of Viking skulls and skeletons reveal pervasive and debilitating health problems that would have made daily life a constant struggle.
Yeah, the bones tell tales.
We're talking severe oral and maxillofacial diseases, rampant dental cavities, painful abscesses, missing teeth from early ages. Sinus and ear infections were incredibly prevalent, leaving telltale traces in bone structures, causing agonizing headaches, earaches.
Chronic infections.
And common too was osteoarthritis of the back, hands, knees, indicating the significant physical strain and constant heavy labor of their daily lives.
Indeed. The constant prevalence of these conditions means a healthy Viking was likely still experiencing significant pain and physical impairment by our modern standards. Without modern pain relief, simple ibuprofen, and powerful antibiotics, even minor injuries or infections could quickly become debilitating or fatal.
Life-threatening, really.
Absolutely. For a modern person, this unmitigated suffering from chronic pain, from constant infections that could spread systemically, would be unbearable and quickly incapacitating. Many other illnesses, not always visible on bones, must have afflicted them: pneumonia, badly inflamed wounds, major causes of death until the modern era.
Right.
Survival beyond age 30 was difficult in some Viking outposts, and infant mortality rates were incredibly high. Adults also suffered from conditions like parodic hyperostosis, spongy bone tissue due to anemia, often from malnutrition or parasites, and scurvy from vitamin C deficiency, leading to weakness, bruising, bleeding gums.
Just a catalog of misery, really. And think about this chilling fact. The smallpox virus DNA was carried by many Viking skeletons unearthed across Europe,
Oh, wow.
suggesting they played a significant and unwitting role in spreading this deadly disease across the continent. Imagine living with the constant unseen threat of smallpox, with no vaccine, no understanding of contagion, no treatment.
Terrifying.
An epidemic could literally decimate a settlement overnight, wiping out families and entire communities, and you would be completely powerless to stop it. Violence, too, was a significant cause of death for Viking men, evidenced by terrible cut marks found on skeletons' wounds that would lead to infection, disfigurement, or rapid death.
A violent world. When it came to medical treatments, they were rudimentary at best. A precarious blend of herbalism, basic surgery, magic, and spiritual beliefs.
Right, the healers.
Healers, or Leiknir, and female shamans, vulva, utilized what medicinal knowledge they had of herbs like yarrow for staunching bleeding, nettle for anti-inflammatory properties, juniper as an antiseptic, preparing poultices, teas, salves.
Some practical knowledge, then.
Some, yes. Surgical procedures were basic but known, including setting broken bones with splints, sewing wounds with gut or plant fibers, cauterization to stop bleeding. There's even archaeological evidence of trepanation drilling into the skull.
Trepanation?
Ah!
Seriously?
Yes, likely to relieve pressure or treat head injuries, though success rates were undoubtedly low. The Norse worldview didn't draw a sharp line between physical and spiritual afflictions, reflecting a holistic but ultimately limited approach to healthcare where prayer and ritual often accompanied practical efforts.
So, not exactly evidence-based medicine.
Not remotely. For a modern person, the reliance on herbal remedies and spiritual rituals for serious ailments would be terrifyingly inadequate, leading to a profound sense of helplessness and inevitable decline. You'd be facing debilitating pain, chronic infection, often rapid death from conditions we now consider easily treatable with a trip to the pharmacy.
To make this lack of modern medicine even more visceral, our sources provided another comparative table, really hammering home the grim reality.
Let's look at it.
Okay, key ailments and the staggering difference. First, severe dental problems, worn teeth, cavities, missing teeth, abscesses. Their approach. No effective treatment, maybe some herbs for pain. Our modern treatment. Dentistry, fluoride fillings, root canals, implants. For a modern person dropped in, chronic, excruciating pain, severe malnutrition from inability to chew, rapid decline.
Next, sinus and ear infections shown by bone growths. Their approach. Herbal remedies, limited drainage, maybe some rituals. We have antibiotics, decongestants, minor surgery. For you, it would be debilitating, constant illness, potential for the infection to spread to the brain, possibly fatal, from something now easily treated.
Arthritis, skeletal traces in back, hands, knees, signs of constant inflammation, joint wear. They had herbs, rest, no real pain relief. We have anti-inflammatories, physical therapy, joint replacements. For a modern person, constant debilitating pain, severely reduced mobility, rapid incapacitation, making basic tasks impossible.
Smallpox, virus DNA and burials. They had no known effective treatment. Widespread, rapid killer. We have vaccination, antivirals, eradication. For a modern individual, high risk of rapid, agonizing death, guaranteed epidemic with no escape.
Infected wounds, common from labor and conflict seen in cut marks. Their methods. Basic surgery, cauterization, herbal antiseptics. We have powerful antibiotics, sterile surgery, proper wound care. For them, often sepsis, limb loss, disfigurement, high risk of agonizing death. For us, relatively straightforward recovery.
And finally, anemia. Porous bone tissue, chronic iron deficiency. Their approach, dietary adjustments if possible, herbal tonics. We have readily available iron supplements, vitamin C diagnostics. For a modern person, chronic fatigue, extreme weakness, severely reduced physical and mental capacity, making the already demanding daily labor utterly impossible. This table directly confronts you with the sheer suffering inherent in Viking life due to the absence of modern medical care. It makes the wouldn't last a day premise more visceral by explicitly connecting specific ailments to their potential for rapid incapacitation or death in the Viking context. It's not just discomfort, it's a constant, life-threatening battle against illness and injury with virtually no chance of relief.
Okay, let's talk about something less glamorous but absolutely critical. Waste management.
Yes. Sanitation.
Or
Lack thereof.
this would be a stark, nauseating contrast to modern sanitation. Our sources give us some truly eye-watering figures from medieval cities, not exclusively Viking, but illustrative. A city of just 10,000 people typically generated 900,000 liters of excrement and nearly 3 million liters of urine annually.
Staggering numbers.
Before underground sewage systems, this waste was frequently discarded into rivers, ditches, or simply near walls and gates, often directly onto the streets. Can you even imagine the stench that would permeate every aspect of daily life, particularly in warmer months?
The sheer volume of untreated human and animal waste in close proximity to living spaces would create an overwhelming stench and unsanitary conditions unimaginable to a modern person. This isn't just a minor discomfort, it's a constant assault on the senses that would make daily life physically nauseating and mentally exhausting.
You wouldn't be able to function.
No, immediately leading to an inability to function. While some regulations were occasionally put in place to prohibit dumping waste in certain areas, people often found alternative, still unsanitary, disposal methods, less frequented areas, even graveyards.
Graveyards, oh my.
Even if some privies were placed at the rear of properties and animal dung was used as valuable fertilizer, the rudimentary street drainage in towns was nowhere near sufficient to manage the constant flow of waste. You'd be stepping in filth everywhere you went.
And this wasn't just a smell problem, it was a profound health crisis, right?
Absolutely, a public health nightmare.
The indiscriminate disposal of waste into watercourses and open areas directly contaminated vital water sources, wells, natural streams, even rainwater collection. This created a perpetually high risk of gastrointestinal conditions, debilitating parasitic infections, cholera, dysentery, other waterborne diseases, exacerbating already poor health.
Every drink a risk.
For us, a sip from a tap is perfectly safe, but for them, every drink of water, every bite of food grown near a settlement could be a gamble with your life, leading to agonizing illness or rapid death.
This also implies a significant, constant burden of individual responsibility for waste management and street cleaning, adding yet another layer of physical and psychological burden.
You had to clean it yourself.
Often, yes. Imagine having to literally clean up human and animal waste from your street day in and day out with no protective gear, no modern cleaning agents, knowing full well the health risks involved.
Unthinkable.
You would quickly fall ill from exposure to such pervasive contamination, or simply collapse from the constant nausea and the physical demands of living in such an unsanitary environment. The deeper insight here is that cleanliness for them was a constant losing battle, a public health fate tied to the very air they breathed and water they drank.
Okay, so beyond the relentless physical hardships, the social and legal landscape of a Viking settlement presented its own profound challenges and dangers for a modern individual.
Very different social rules.
Viking society was strictly stratified into distinct social classes, a hierarchy that largely determined your entire life. At the top were the nobles, known as jarls,
The chieftains.
powerful chieftains commanding respect, wielding significant influence. In the middle were the free people, the carls, typically farmers who owned land and had rights within the community. And at the very bottom were the slaves, or thralls, as we discussed. Our sources emphasize that the most significant division was stark and unforgiving between the free and the unfree, with thralls having no rights at all and being treated as property. Owning land was paramount for carls, determining not just material wealth, but social position, history, destiny. So forget social mobility as we know it.
No climbing the ladder easily.
Your birth determined your life. Land determined your standing. Virtually no way to move between these castes.
And in a society where honor, family, and lineage were crucially important, and where breaking societal norms could lead to severe loss of honor and societal approval, social etiquette and strict adherence to tradition were not mere niceties. They were absolutely critical for survival and standing.
Honor was everything.
Pretty much. Personal honor wasn't just abstract, it was tangible currency, achieved through specific attributes, courage in battle or defending your family, cleverness in negotiation or strategy, generosity towards kinsmen and community, fellowship with peers. For a modern person, unfamiliar with these intricate, often unwritten rules, and the severe consequences of transgression like ostracization, loss of protection, even violent retribution navigating social interactions would be an absolute minefield.
You'd constantly put your foot in it.
Constantly risking social ruin, or worse, simply by not understanding or inadvertently breaking an unwritten rule, potentially making you an outcast with no support. The insight here is how deeply individual identity was enmeshed in a collective, honor-bound social contract.
Viking societies were often governed by local assemblies called things, where free men could discuss political matters, make laws, decide on punishments. A key figure was the law speaker, who had memorized all the laws and traditions, reciting them from memory.
An oral legal tradition.
Right. While this sounds like a fascinating, even democratic form of assembly, remember who was not included: women, children, and especially thralls. The idea of universal legal protections or inherent human rights as we understand them would be completely alien to the system. Your rights were contingent on your status.
Precisely. This highlights a fundamental lack of universal human rights, a concept so central to our modern legal systems. Even for free individuals, rights were often tied to land ownership, family connections, one's place within the strict social hierarchy.
So if you were alone,
A modern person, accustomed to civil liberties, independent courts, a broad social safety net, would find themselves utterly vulnerable and without recourse in this system, especially if they lacked established family connections or wealth. Your rights would be dictated by your birth and relationships, not inherent human dignity. That's a terrifying prospect for someone from our time. Without that familial protection, you were exposed.
okay, now for a concept that would instantly shatter any sense of personal safety for a modern individual: the Viking justice system.
Ah, the blood feuds.
Fundamentally based on blood feuds and honor. Vengeance and retribution weren't just tolerated, they were considered justice, a sacred obligation. If someone was slain, their kinsmen were obligated to avenge them, though the vengeance had to be taken appropriately and in a fair manner, supposedly to prevent endless cycles of retaliation.
Supposedly.
Publicizing slayings was crucial for legal protection, distinguishing a legitimate, honorable act of vengeance or manslaughter, where reconciliation was sometimes possible through compensation from a dishonorable, cowardly murder. So, there's no 911 to call, no centralized court system for protection. Justice was literally in your family's hands.
And if you didn't have a strong family.
Exactly. If you were a stranger, incredibly vulnerable, think about that for personal safety and emotional well-being.
The legal system's reliance on blood feuds means that personal safety was constantly at risk, not just from external threats, but from internal disputes within the community. Any perceived slight, any insult, any injury, however minor by our standards, could escalate into a deadly interfamily conflict.
Sounds exhausting.
Your survival fundamentally depended on the strength and willingness of your kin group to defend you. A modern person used to centralized law enforcement and judicial systems that mediate disputes and protect individuals would be utterly unprepared for a world where personal justice and vengeance were primary. This would lead to constant fear and hypervigilance.
Always looking over your shoulder.
You'd be living in a state of perpetual anxiety, knowing that any interaction could potentially lead to a deadly, unending conflict, and that your life literally hung on the power of your relatives.
These feuds could also culminate in something called outlawry, right? Banishment for 3 years to a lifetime.
Social death, essentially.
Effectively made the individual an outcast, stripped of all legal protections and social support. Prolonged feuds also resulted in significant social stigma and severely disrupted economic activities as families were consumed by vengeance rather than farming or trade. This wasn't just a legal penalty. It was a social death sentence, casting you out to fend for yourself against everything, with absolutely no recourse.
And beyond these internal conflicts, we must address the iconic yet horrifying reality of Viking raiding and slavery.
Yeah, the raiding.
Our sources detail extensive campaigns of raiding and plunder from the late 8th century, seeking not only portable wealth like silver and furs, but also human captives.
Taking people.
Yes. What's particularly grim here is that these captives, women, children, men from invaded lands, were violently removed from their homes, often held in encampments, ransomed for profit, exploited as forced labor, or simply sold into slavery across vast networks.
This is horrifying.
The scale of these raids could involve hundreds or even thousands of captives, highlighting that slavery was not just an unfortunate byproduct, but a fundamental economic and social institution of the Viking Age.
Built into the system.
For a modern individual, the constant, pervasive threat of being captured and enslaved, losing all rights and dignity, subjected to unimaginable abuses, it would be an overwhelming and inescapable terror. Your day might literally end with your freedom being irrevocably stripped away, a fate more terrifying than mere death for many.
And this ties back to the critical importance of your social network, doesn't it?
Absolutely crucial.
Protection and support in these blood feuds, and indeed from the threat of external raiding, largely depended on having a larger kin group, a strong, cohesive family and clan that could defend your honor and your person.
That's the ultimate takeaway on social survival. This underscores that individual survival was deeply, fundamentally intertwined with one's family and clan. A modern person, accustomed to individual autonomy and state protection, would find themselves incredibly vulnerable without such a network.
An easy target.
Making them an easy target in a society where personal and family honor dictated life and death, and where external threats were ever present. You would not just be an individual, you would be a representative of your family, and their standing and strength directly impacted your own safety and survival. Without that backing, you were essentially a lamb among wolves.
Wow.
The psychological impact of that constant vulnerability, the knowledge that your existence is so fragile, would be overwhelming.
So, what does this all mean for our hypothetical modern person trying to last a day in a Viking settlement? It means, well, a jarring descent into a world utterly alien to our modern sensibilities.
A shock to the system.
It means unending physical exhaustion from ceaseless demands, constant illness from pervasive disease without medicine, profound psychological stress from the precariousness of hygiene, the crushing lack of privacy and personal comfort.
Yeah.
Add to that the constant, ever-present danger of violence and enslavement, all within a rigid social hierarchy that offers no safety net, no upward mobility, and often no mercy. It means a world where comfort is non-existent, convenience is a foreign concept, and safety is never guaranteed.
Not for a moment.
The romanticized Viking image, the one with the horned helmets and glorious battles, it just dissolves into a stark reality of sheer grit, brutal endurance, and an unwavering, desperate will to survive against overwhelming odds. A modern person accustomed to comfort, convenience, safety nets would quickly succumb to the sheer brutality of it all. Likely within hours, I think. Certainly within a day.
The fact that the Vikings not only lasted but thrived in such conditions is not just a testament to their ferocity, but to an extraordinary, almost unimaginable level of resilience and raw adaptability that seems lost to us today.
Truly remarkable.
They found ways to cope, to endure, to build complex societies and economies in a world that would overwhelm us in mere hours. Their entire lives were a masterclass in survival, a battle won every single day.
Yeah.
This deep dive into Viking survival challenges us to consider not just how much our world has changed, but how fundamentally human adaptability itself has shifted. If the Viking survival was a daily, hard-won battle of physical and mental endurance, what does that say about the forms of resilience we might be unknowingly losing, or maybe gaining, in our pursuit of modern comfort and convenience? It makes you wonder what primal skills we've allowed to atrophy and what new forms of coping and strength we've perhaps developed in their place, tailored for a vastly different world.
A powerful question to mull over. Next time you complain about your Wi-Fi or maybe the long line at the grocery store,
Yeah.
maybe spare a thought for the Longhouse and the daily grind of just staying alive.
Good perspective.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more well-informed and perhaps a lot more grateful for your modern conveniences. We'll see you on the next deep dive.